They are a handbrake on progress. They are preventing us from succeeding as a society, and frankly, they're going to destroy the world. The other night, I put out a tweet asking, what should I make a video about? And people gave various responses, many of them good. Some of them I'm just less equipped to actually elaborate on or contribute anything of value to that you haven't heard a million times. And this might slightly fall into that category. But I wanted to give it a crack because it is rather subjective, given it's a relatively new term and everyone that you use it to describe hates it. So, the woke right. What is the woke right? I'm not going to sit here and claim that the woke right is a specific thing. I'm going to give you what I think the woke right is, and why I think the woke right is so similar to the woke left and they don't even realize it. Part of the reason why they're so similar is because they don't realize it. First, I want to talk about woke people in general, the woke left. What makes the woke left stand out is that they have no regard for the truth. They have no regard for a substantive opinion or a substantive argument to support any opinion they have. And rather than attempting to articulate an argument to support their position, they will just gaslight you. They will, make you out to be the bad guy in any given situation. They will make it sound like whatever your argument is irrational, or you will see, or you don't get it yet, or you haven't woken up yet, all of these sorts of things. There were, of course, elements of this with the kind of freedom communities in COVID times, though to a degree, that was a slightly different situation. I kind of give them a little bit more leniency, given, for the most part, they were kind of right. But that was more contextual of the times. They had been marginalized, demonized, segregated from society in many respects, and no matter how many times they actually articulated strong arguments, no one listened to them, so they just got to the point where they started calling everyone sheep. The woke right's different because they've never successfully argued their case. Ever. Never. And in many cases, they're rehashing arguments from 100 years ago, which didn't even make sense then. The woke left and the woke right are similar in the sense that they can't substantiate their beliefs. They can't articulate strong arguments because they don't have any strong arguments, because whatever they believe is driven by an ideological belief, a conclusion that they've already reached, but they haven't actually done any of the working. It's like the worst thing in school, right? Where you have an answer, you know what the answer is, but you don't pass because you didn't do the working. In this case, they think they know what the answer is, but they're too arrogant to realize that they're wrong. And primarily, they're wrong because they didn't do any of the working. In this case, the critical thinking required to reach that logical conclusion. The woke right seemingly lacks the capacity for that. But another way to look at the woke right is, like those on the left, they have been politically ostracized to a degree, in the sense that the prevailing zeitgeist in general in society is very, very much at odds with their belief system. And I feel like that's what kind of grew the progressive leftist movement, which is now very mainstream, and is growing those on the right who are going more and more to the right. And even if not necessarily far right, they are having radical views or radical opinions. And this just typically happens when you view everything in the world and it just seems profane. It's fair to say that liberalism is inherently profane, especially in its current form, and that drives people away. People are like, why are we in the situation where everything we once held sacred is now a joke, or is now overlooked, and that we worship ourselves, and that everything that we seem to hold valuable is no longer valuable, and we just exist for the sake of existence? That's gonna make you feel like an outsider. Now, fortunately for most people, they don't really feel that level or that deep feeling. They may on a surface level, but it doesn't cut very deep. The politically homeless, the politically ostracized, those who are becoming increasingly radical and holding views which are increasingly illogical, it's because they are being attracted to ideologies which don't encourage critical thinking. Or in this case, they're allowing the ideology to do the thinking for them. Because doing so gives them a sense of comfort that they can understand why the world is the way it is, and that if they follow these steps, that maybe it'll be healed, maybe they can fix it. But that's the problem, is if you go down that pathway of holding on to a particular set of views and have no wiggle room, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're ultimately becoming what you loathe. Because that's very much the issue with the woke left. They are simply incapable of viewing the world in any other way. They refuse to because it's their comfort zone. People don't like moving away from their comfort zone if they can help it. The problem with the left is that's becoming an increasingly mainstream view of the world, especially with young people. Like in the UK right now, 70% of people between, I think it was 18 and 24, maybe it was 18 and 26, 70% of young people in the UK between like 18 and 20 something support left-wing parties. What kind of hope does the UK have if something doesn't radically shift in that population? Especially if they start breeding equally delusional leftists. Because that's what leftists are, they're delusional, and that's what the woke right are as well, they are delusional. Now that's not to say that their delusion isn't understandable, that how they've reached that point isn't understandable, but as far as I'm concerned, if the basis of your entire worldview is predicated on something that you cannot successfully argue, you are delusional. Because you have no idea why you support it in the first place. You have no idea why you actually believe it. You want something to be true that isn't true. Or you want something to be true, but you have no idea how to explain that it's true. This is exactly what the left does. But something else that the left does is they will attack those who are more moderate. They will make out like the moderates are the problem. And in many respects, moderates kind of are the problem, especially the ones that are moderately to the liberal side of things rather than moderate to the conservative side of things. But they will make out like everyone but them is the issue, and that, frankly, unless you adopt their particular worldview, you are the enemy and there is nothing to be done. Now, there are people who are, of course, too far gone to be helped, in this case, most leftists. But with ideology, anyone can technically be saved. There are just some people that will never ever change. So, whilst I have a very, very hard line on leftists, I will call them delusional. I will say that they contribute zero value to political discourse. I will say that they simply cannot function in society without adopting delusional worldviews. I'll say all of these things, and I will say that they are taking us backwards. They are a handbrake on progress. They are preventing us from succeeding as a society, and frankly, they're going to destroy the world. I will say all of those things, but that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to work with them if they start putting in the effort to stop thinking like a raging Marxist. It's not to say that if I don't identify an issue and there is a situation where I might have to work with a leftist to sort it out, that I won't do my best to try. Marxists, of course, wouldn't have a bar of it. Woke people won't have a bar of doing that. That's why they cancel anyone, even if they agree on several things. But the woke right's similar. No, we can't vote for that political party because I disagree with them on this particular issue. And because I disagree with them on this particular issue, they are evil incarnate. In fact, because they hold that particular view on that particular issue, they must be controlled opposition, they cannot be trusted, and they are very, very likely working for the New World Order, despite the fact that I agree with them on 99% of other things. See how illogical it is? Now, to give a strong example of where the woke right and the woke left are in unison, it is the issue of the Jewish population. You see, they don't particularly care about the double standard that they hold Jews to. They don't particularly care that their argument as to why they are evil incarnate and need to be dealt with makes absolutely no sense and parallels that of, 20th century Europe. But they don't care about that. They are set that they are controlling the world, they are the problem, and no amount of logic is going to stand in the way of that. You see, what they don't understand is that they believe that this particular group of people are responsible for all the evil, all the problems everything that's happening in the Western world that is, destroying us. Despite the fact that none of those issues are inherent to that specific population. It's an ideological thing that is causing these problems, that people in this population do happen to believe in, but it's not inherent to that population, and many in that population disagree with it. The reality is, you can have as many Jewish bankers as you like. You can have as many Jewish politicians as you like. You can have as many Jewish lawyers, as many Jewish business owners, whatever. It does not matter. The fact they're Jewish, in this case, has never correlated to their ideology and their impact. Because there are Jewish people who are proponents of Marxism, communism, feminism, and a range of other things, globalism, somehow Jews are responsible. They're the bad guys. Simply because there are Jewish people who believe it. There are Jewish people in high places who believe it. There are Jewish people in high places which push it. Wow, okay. There are also white people in those places pushing it, disproportionately so in many respects, especially given our population. And yet we don't hold white people to that standard. We don't blame white people for communism. We don't blame white people for Marxism. We don't say white people need to be dealt with because they are causing a lot of the issues. No. Even though white people only make up about 1/5 of the world's population, and yet are arguably the most responsible for all globalism. Until the day comes when these bad things are inherent to being Jewish, and that these bad things are being done purely by Jews, for the sake of Jews, you won't have an argument, and you don't have an argument. And so that's an example of how the woke right views the Jewish situation, which I just don't buy. I tweeted the other day, these people who are anti-Jew are never going to win me over when they are making the argument that a white chick getting knocked up by a black guy is Jewish people's fault. It makes no sense. Why would I ever think that the people making that argument are the rational ones, are the ones with the position that I should get behind? It makes absolutely no sense. And then for people to attempt to actually defend that position without actually providing an actual argument, just saying that, well, technically they brought in feminism, or technically they encouraged immigration, so that's their fault. The amount of non-Jewish people that want mass immigration is mind-boggling. It's got absolutely nothing to do with Jewish people. It's got everything to do with ideology. Ideology is the enemy, not the ethnicity. Now, there are ethnicities that are an exception to that. The Jewish ethnicity is not one of them. Another person that you could argue is woke right pointed out, it's called pattern recognition. You see, this is why it's gone back so long, because they've recognized a pattern of behavior. It's like, no, you haven't recognized a pattern of behavior. You have a pattern of a double standard. That's all it is. Like, do we actually think that what happened in World War II was because of pattern recognition and because Jews were actually a problem? Like, you might argue that immigration policy in Europe at the time was problematic and that something needed to be done about it. Like, I'm not against deportations when it seems appropriate, okay? I'm not against getting rid of certain groups of people from your society if they are not going to cooperate or assimilate. I'm not against it. But in doing so, I want to do it in a humane way, in a way that makes sense, in a way that isn't just targeting a group for the sake of targeting them, making them a scapegoat for all your problems. Mr. Adolf understood that the economic situation in Germany was terrible, and ultimately certain leaders found a scapegoat. And that scapegoat in this case by Mr. Adolf were the Jews. The economic situation sucks. All of these other issues are plaguing us here in Germany, and we need to do something about it. The Jews are the problem. Let's deal with it. In reality, that's not the case, is it? We all know this. In reality, the economic situation, the situation for Germany in general, was because of the actions in World War I and following. Just to rehash all that so I can articulate myself somewhat better. The woke right cannot articulate their opposition to Jews successfully because They are holding a double standard, a standard which they don't hold any other ethnic group seemingly to. They blame ideology on a particular ethnic group because some people in that ethnic group happen to hold that particular ideology, despite the fact that it's not inherent to that ethnic group, and many people from other ethnic groups hold that ideology. They blame immigration on Jews, just as Hitler did. They blame the dilution of the white race's blood on the Jews, just like Hitler did. They blame the economic situation on the Jews, just like Hitler did. They blame the degeneracy on the Jews, just like Hitler did. We know these views were wrong 80 years ago, and so how would they suddenly be right now? It's ideology responsible for immigration and the various people in our governments who are pushing such policy. The people that we are electing, we are part of the problem more so than Jews. It is not the Jews diluting our population, it is us. With our own decision making. With our own decision that, hey, maybe I am attracted to that person of that different ethnicity. Now for me, I'm a bit of a purist in this sense. I'm also not entirely against it if it ever happened. But I appreciate the need for immigration control, for assimilation, frankly, because I think assimilation is crucial if you want to have a cohesive society. But again, the immigration issue, the economic issue, the is our blood being diluted issue, is not the fault of this ethnic group that is based in the Middle East. It is the fault of us, our voting decisions, those that we elect, and people in high places, be them elected or unelected, because of the ideologies they hold. That is what we have to blame. That is what we have to tackle. Focusing on a particular group of people who, frankly, aren't responsible for our issues is why the woke right will never succeed, the woke right will never achieve what they want, and that the woke right is frankly delusional and lacking of a coherent argument. And I don't care if my follower base halves after this, because you need to hear it, and this is what I've built myself up on, being blunt, telling it like it is, and not caring if I hurt your feelings.